read hundreds of books, sat through thousands of hours of lectures, videos, podcasts, consumed more information in the last 5 years than entire generations had access to in their lifetime. And yet, if someone asks you right now to summarize what you learned last month, most of it is gone. That's not a memory problem, that's a learning method problem. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. When you encounter new information, reading, listening, watching, your brain processes it in working memory first. Working memory is small. It can hold roughly 4 chunks of information at a time. It's not designed for storage. It's designed for immediate use. If that information isn't transferred to long-term memory through repetition, through emotion, through connection to something you already know, it disappears, usually within 24 hours. This is called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, named after a German psychologist, Hermann Ebbinghaus, who mapped it in 1880s. He found that without any reinforcement, we forget approximately 70% of new information within 24 hours, and up to 90% within a week. You're not forgetting because you're not smart enough. You're forgetting because nobody told you that passive consumption is not the same as learning. Reading is not learning. Watching is not learning. Highlighting is not learning. Those are inputs. Learning is what happens when your brain has to work with that input, retrieve it, apply it, explain it, connect it to something else. The difference matters enormously. You've probably heard that some people are visual learners, others are auditory, others learn by doing. It's everywhere. Schools teach it, personality tests included. People say it about themselves with complete confidence. I'm a visual learner, that's just how I am. There's one problem. The research doesn't support it. In 2008, psychologists Parshler, M.C. Daniel, Rohrer, and Bjork published a comprehensive review of learning styles hypothesis. Their conclusion: there is no credible evidence that matching instruction to a person's preferred learning that style improves outcomes. What the research actually shows is that almost everyone learns better with multiple modalities combined: visual, auditory, written, applied, not because of a fixed style, but because multiple encodings of the same information create more pathways for retrieval. The more ways your brain encounters something, the more places it gets stored, and the more places it's stored, the easier it is to find. This matters because if you've been limiting yourself to one method, only listening to podcasts, only reading, only watching, you've been working against your own brain. The goal is not to find your style and stick to it. The goal is to engage with information in as many forms as possible. Here's the single most evidence-based learning technique that almost nobody uses: active recall. The idea is simple. Instead of rereading your notes, instead of highlighting the same sentences again, instead of passively reviewing material, you close the book. You literally close the book and you try to remember. You ask yourself, what do I actually know about this? What were the main ideas? What surprised me? What do I still not understand? And you struggle. You feel the edges of what you know and don't know. And that struggle, the effortful retrieval, is exactly what encodes the information more deeply. Psychologists call this the testing effect, and it's one of the most replicated findings in cognitive science. A 2006 study by Roger and Karpik found that students who studied by testing themselves retained significantly more information 1 week later than students who spent the same time rereading. Not slightly more, significantly more. Rereading feels productive because it's easy. Recognition feels like knowledge. You see the words, they look familiar. Your brain says, yes, I know this, but recognition is not retrieval. And retrieval is what you actually need when it matters. This is why journaling about what you're learning works so much better than just reading. Writing forces retrieval. You have to find the idea in your own brain and put it into your own words. That process alone deepens encoding in ways passive review never can. The practice is simple. After you read something, a chapter, an article, a section, close it and write down everything you remember. Not from the text, from your brain. What you can retrieve is what you actually know. So you've learned something, you've done active recall, you remember it today. How do you make sure you remember it in a month, in a year? This is where spaced repetition comes in. The concept comes directly from Ebbinghaus and the forgetting curve we talked about earlier. The insight is this: the best time to review something is right before you are about to forget it. Not immediately after learning, not randomly, right before the memory fades. If you review something at exactly that moment, the memory gets strengthened, and the next time you'll forget it takes longer, and the time after that, longer still, until eventually the information moves into a long-term memory where it becomes genuinely yours. The intervals look something like this: review after 1 day, then after 3 days, then after a week, then after 2 weeks, then after a month, then several months. Each time the same information, each time a little more deeply encoded. This is why cramming doesn't work for real retention. You might remember everything the night before an exam, but your brain hasn't had time to space the repetitions, so within a week, it's gone. The practical application of this doesn't require any special system. It can be as simple as keeping a list of things you are learning and scheduling brief reviews. Rereading your own notes, not the original source, your notes at increasing intervals, or returning to a book not once but several times, lightly, purposefully. The goal is not to consume more. The goal is own what you actually already consumed. Here's something counterintuitive. If you want to learn 3 things, let's say 3 concepts, 3 skills, 3 topics, the instinct is to master one completely before moving to the next. Finish topic A, then B, then C. This feels logical, it feels organized. But the research shows that interleaving, switching before topics within a single study session leads to better long-term retention and transfer of knowledge that blocked practice. A study by Cornell and Bjork found that students who studied different types of problems interleaved performed significantly better on tests than those who studied them in blocks, even though the blocked students felt more confident during the studying. That feeling of confidence was false. The difficulty of switching, that slight disorientation of moving between topics, is actually the sign that learning is happening. Your brain is being forced to discriminate between concepts, to find the right approach for each problem, to build flexible knowledge rather than rigid pattern matching. This applies to everything. To learning languages, don't just drill vocabulary for an hour, mix grammar, listening, speaking, writing. To reading, don't just read one book exclusively, let ideas from different books collide. The collision is the point. Ideas that come from different directions and meet in your brain create connections that single track learning never produce. Your brain doesn't learn in straight lines. It learns in networks. You're not wasting time when you sleep. You are learning. During sleep, particularly during deep sleep and REM sleep, your brain does something extraordinary. It replaces the experiences of the day. It consolidates memories, transferring information from the hippocampus, where short-term memories are stored, to the neocortex, where long-term memories live. It literally moves learning from temporary storage to permanent storage while you're unconscious. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker, whose research on sleep is some of the most important work of the last 2 decades, has shown that sleep after learning improves memory retention by up to 40% compared to staying awake. Not 5, not 10, up to 40%, which means staying up late to study more is, in many cases, actively working against you. You're adding more input while preventing your brain from processing what it already has. The most productive thing you can do after a period of intense learning is sleep. Not review, not reread, sleep. This also means that the timing of learning matters. Information learned close to sleep gets consolidated more effectively. A short review of something important before bed, not cramming, just a gentle revisit, takes advantage of what your brain is already about to do. You've been treating sleep as the enemy of productivity. It was always part of the process. There's one question that, if you ask it consistently while learning, will transform how deeply you understand anything. Why? Not what is this, not how does this work, why does this work this way, why is this true, why does this matter. This technique is called elaborative interrogation, and what it does is force your brain to connect new information to existing knowledge, to build an explanation rather than just accept as a fact. Facts without explanations are fragile. They can be memorized temporarily, but they can break down quickly under pressure when the context changes, when you need to apply the knowledge somewhere new. Explanations are durable because they're not stored as isolated facts. They're stored as part of a web of understanding. When you ask why, genuinely, curiously, not rhetorically, you force your brain to find that web, to locate where this new information connects to what you already know. And that connection is what makes it stick. This is one of the reasons annotation works so well as a learning practice. When you write in the margins of a book, you're not just noting what the author said, you're responding to it, questioning it, connecting it to your own experience and knowledge. You're asking why, and in doing so, you're making the knowledge yours rather than the author's. Here is perhaps the most important insight in this entire video. You do not fully understand something until you can explain it in your own words. Not quote it, not summarize it, explain it as if to someone who has never encountered the idea before. This is called the generation effect. Information that you generate yourself, that you produce, create, explain, teach is encoded far more deeply than information you simply receive. Psychologist Richard Feynman built an entire learning technique around this idea. The Feynman technique. The premise is simple. Take a concept, explain it out loud or in writing as if you're teaching it to someone who knows nothing about it. Notice where you get stuck, where your explanation breaks down, where you reach for the source material because you can't generate it yourself. Those gaps are exactly where your understanding is incomplete. And filling those gaps, going back, understanding more deeply, then trying to explain again is what real learning looks like. This is why teaching is the best way to learn. Why writing about ideas deepens your understanding of them. Why having a conversation about something you're studying is more valuable than rereading the same material. Every time you create, write, speak, teach, make, you are learning at the deepest level available to you. Consumption is the beginning of learning. Creation is where it actually happens. Okay, what this means for how you live. This isn't just about studying. This is about every book you read, every podcast you listen to, every conversation that changed something in you, every idea that feels important but slips away before you can do anything with it. You've been consuming your whole life. And somewhere in all of that consuming, there is so much that was meant to become yours. That had the potential to change how you think, how you see, how you move through the world. But it passed through without being processed, without being questioned, without being connected to anything, without being retrieved, repeated, explained, created with. The shift is not about consuming less. It's about treating what you consume as something worth actually keeping. Ask why. Write it down in your own words. Come back to it. Teach it to someone. Let it collide with other ideas. Sleep on it. Retrieve it when your brain resists. Do the work that passive consumption never asks of you. Because the goal was never to know more things. The goal was always to actually become someone who understands. And understanding, real understanding, the kind that changes you, only comes from learning how you actually learn. I'll see you in the next videos.